Right, we're live. We're live, guys. How are you doing? How are you doing? Ready for some tips and tricks in Unreal Engine 5. All right. Lighting. Yeah, I've saw some people asking for lighting. We're going to talk about it because lighting is a very important subject. I will say there are a lot of things going on, and lighting is not really as technical as you think. We're going to go through that in a moment. So basically the goal of this live stream is to show you my thought process for deciding where to put lights, where to uh, how can I decide something looks good or bad. And that's something that a lot of people struggle with. A lot of people struggle with this because there is nothing on the internet that can really show you like, hey, this is a good choice. When you put this in your level, it's gonna look good, or when you rotate it this way, it's gonna look better. They all teach you like how to use buttons, right? Like how to drag and drop. Everyone knows, like I can go to the content browser and I can just drag a box here. Everyone knows how to do that, but there is a thing that a lot of people who have been working in art for many years have, and it's called judgment. And judgment develops over years, and it's a pretty much a non-transferable skill. And what I mean by that is it's a skill that you cannot get overnight. It's something that takes years and practice, and there is really no shortcut to develop this sense of awareness of what makes something look good or bad. There are just a lot of fundamentals that you have been practicing over and over and over, and then you get your muscle memory ready so that you can just make decisions really easily without even thinking about it. But this kind of thing takes practice, and I'm gonna do my best to show you like what's the thought process behind it and how can you start applying those concepts into your environments to make better decisions so that your environments can look better. Okay, so let's talk about something really fundamental here. Let's go back. I have this image right here. I have this image. It's most of you will recognize these characters. Most of you will know, like, for example, who's this guy? Who's this guy? Who's this guy? I definitely recognize most of them. And for a good reason. This thing here, it's called silhouette. And silhouette, it's something really important that you're gonna see later how it applies to Unreal Engine when we apply silhouettes into the 3D world. But just to show you how important a silhouette is, let's take a look at one of those characters, and let's start painting here. For example, this guy here. I'm sure everyone will know Bart Simpson is very well known for this spiky hair, right? So what will happen if I just paint something like this? Should have painted black. And I start removing all those little details here. Suddenly, you have a feeling of who he is, but as I remove these small bumps, insignificant at glance, which don't make any sense, suddenly, I don't really know what this is, right? If I remove this, you will know who's the character, right? So, and if you think about it, I haven't changed that much. If I go back, I can just do this, and there is some changes, but it's not like a huge change. I didn't do something like this, for example. I didn't do something like this, right? It's just small changes that make a big difference, right? It's just to show you like how important silhouette is. Polnareff is not here, unfortunately, but I'm sure you could find it in a silhouette if you find Polnareff in one of these black and white situations. But in JoJo, everyone will look like very strong, right? So, but anyway, these are all iconic characters. Maybe these are too old for you, maybe not. Hopefully not. Especially this one. I'm sure everyone knows this one. Everyone knows this one. So, I guess next time I need to put the JoJo example, right? So more, more up-to-date characters, right? But you can see how important the silhouette is. As soon as I change it, you cannot tell what that is. And I just changed a little bit of a bump here and there. So silhouette, it's found in many different ways. Let's go back to Unreal Engine. You see where you go. There you go. And I like to use a trick that I have here that basically helps me to check the silhouette inside Unreal Engine. It's not necessarily applies in every case, but if there is a case where all your specular values are the same, you can use this trick. You can go for specular, and you will see it looks like this. Now what you see here is the silhouette, right? So you can take a look at this silhouette here. It's something like that. It's bumpy. Whereas this one, you can tell it's architecture because, it starts looking like this, like bumps like this, right? Bumps like this. You can tell whenever something has a very predictable pattern, it's made by humans. When it doesn't have a predictable pattern, it's made by nature. So if you want to make this better, sometimes you want to sell the idea that I want to sell the character of my architecture. And you have this. You have some rocks in the background. So what happens if I hide this? Immediately you will see that, oh, actually, I see them. Now, is this a shape that you want to have? Maybe. Let's take a look at how it looks like this now. Can you tell the difference between this and this? There's quite a lot. Just by changing the silhouette, you can already tell what's happening here. Now, there's another principle that is called, like, you have your three layers. You have your foreground, your middle ground, and your background. That's why this one is here. But most of the times, maybe you want to put this one a little bit on the back, perhaps. You don't want to affect all of those buildings. So now when I go here, buffer visualization, and then go to specular, you can already see that I can see some of those shapes here, and I can see some of the shapes of the background here. So sometimes when you are portraying something important, especially when it's the main subject of the scene, in this case it isn't, so I really don't mind. I have this, but sometimes you have like a very unique shape, like a statue or something, and then you put something in the back and you completely change the silhouette. So just by knowing that, like, you are aware of it, then you can start making this these changes, right? So let me hide this. You can already tell what's going on here. Look at another silhouette. You can take a look at the specular value here. Like you can tell, like you have a line here, and then you have bumpiness, and then you have architecture, right? Architecture, straight lines, and then some soft lines here. So they are all like interconnected to each other. Now, this silhouette is just the beginning on really trying to understand what's going on in the 3D world. Because when you look at this, you only want to think about shapes, values, color, harmony. You don't want to think about like logical things like, oh, this is a house, this is a ground, this is a palm tree, and this is a rock. That's not the way to look at it. The way you look at it, it's in terms of shapes, of lights, and lines that connect between each other. So let's go back to Photoshop. I have a few examples here. These are classical paintings that you can find pretty much on the internet. And what makes those so special? Let me just grab a couple of notes here. And when you look at them with black and white, you will see that you have a pattern here. First of all, you have a spectrum of value that, let's just say, it goes from here for pure pitch dark, let's just call it 0%, and then use like here 100% bright, right? So if you think about it in the 3D world, what creates a line, it's just the difference, the change of angles, right? The change of angles between forms are the ones that create lines, and that will greatly depend on the lighting that you have on your scene. So for instance, the main subject is here. How do you know it's the main subject? It's the one with having more contrast, right? Why? Because there is black values on the closest and bright values here. And same as this character. This character is in contrast with another one. It has like white closest against the black closest you see here. And then you have the black hair that is being contrasty with the white closest here. So you can tell these are the main characters. The rest of the background, you can tell like it's roughly like 60 to 70% dark. Let me have a look. It is mostly like that, 80%, 90. It's very dark, actually. It's very, very dark. When you go to the middle, it's actually like 60% or something like that. So not everything in your scene needs to be contrasty. If you add contrast to everything, then nothing is important, right? So let's do another example. If you cannot, this example is quite obvious, but if you cannot tell, you can just pump the values here. I know this will hurt your eyes for a moment. Just try to do something like this. There you go. So we mostly have values that are bright and that are dark. Can you tell the difference here? When I just put this note, you can tell which ones are brighter values and which ones are the darker values. And you cannot see here, but if I check this value, you will see that it's like maybe 80% black. And when I choose this one, it's like 50-60% bright. So what the levels node does is to show us which values are brighter and make it even brighter, and which values are darker and make it even darker, right? So you can tell like there is some design into this. some design into this. It's not like pitch black, where, for example, you have something like this. Just like we talked about silhouettes before, everything here is a silhouette. Now that you don't have all the information here, you can think about silhouettes and think about what can make my image interesting. What if I just paint this black, just like this? Will it be as interesting as before? I don't think so. And this is something that you can develop with time. You can have your own judgment of things. Or maybe these little dots here I can remove completely. Will it have the same impact in my image? Maybe. Or maybe this white wall here at the back, and I just leave everything very balanced. Or maybe I just remove this. Or I can just work on the contrary. I can just paint white here. And you can tell how different your image will be, right? So silhouettes are found everywhere in our paintings, and every kind of subject we work on art, they are found everywhere. They are just not as obvious. So for example, in this painting, I believe it is by Craig Mullins. You can just go back here, saturation, levels, and put the saturation here. You can already tell what are the lines here. When we look at those silhouettes, we take a look at the lines. Have you noticed something? It's a very similar example I showed you before in Unreal Engine. Have you noticed that the background it's on a different value compared to the foreground? Like this castle here has a different value compared to the clouds that are behind it. Obviously, these are the main characters. And you have a contrast here. It's a white ground against a black wall. So you have contrast in this area around here. And then you have like mid values around this area. So if I pump up the values, you will notice that something interesting will happen here. You can still see the silhouette of the castle. Take a look at this. Actually, I'm gonna let's go here. Take a look at the silhouette. It's here. It haven't changed at all. It's the same one. Obviously, this tool allows us to check a more extreme example, but you need to make sure your lines in your environments are visible for you. That you can tell, like even without any detail. Look at this. If I zoom in, there is no detail here. It's pitch black. Even without detail, you can tell, you know what? This is an interesting image. This is definitely an interesting image. Look at the ground here. This contrast that creates between the ground and the walls that are around it. The hat of the people were actually bright. You can tell in this situation. And even when you are add color into it, which is another layer of complexity, you know, you can still have like a structure, you know? You have like a structure that you're working with. So this is what we call design metrics. Why it's called design metrics? It's because you work between contrast and intensity. And you kind of like, if you have high intensity or high contrast, you will be like here, right? And maybe like low contrast. I don't think intensity is the right word. Maybe we can call it ratio. Because ratio will be more like the percentage of how much white there is in your scene and how much dark. So if you have a lot of contrast in your scene and you have like too much white and not much dark, you have something like this. If you have something in the middle, you will have like mid-tones, like somewhere around the middle of this painting, and not so much, you know, difference between the values inside. So if you take a look here, it's very easy to understand, like, okay, these are the main characters, it's a bright value, and then I add the midtones on top of it, just enough so that I can read the structures here. I think this is the keyword for this, like, read the scene. It's very, very important. You can read what this is. Even when you are like this, you can already tell and guess, like, okay, this may be a, oops, this may be a background that you wanna have or not. Same here, saturation. I'm gonna go very quickly through these examples because I'm sure you can already start seeing the pattern. You can see, like, most of the scene is bright and you have small areas of darkness. It's like 30% darkness and 70% brightness. And when you look at here, obviously the main character is the guy that is laying down, and you have the contrast between the bear and the clothes. And it's all about the silhouette. It's all about the shapes that this one creates. So this is what is important for you. This is what you need to train for. Same as here. I mean, even without putting it on black and white, I know this part, it's the main area. How do I know? There is a lot of contrast between the light and the shadow. So if I go here, I can go back and you can already tell the main point of interest is here. The main point of detail, it's around this area. The rest, not really that important. And it's not that we don't want to make it important. It's just that it's just the way it is. Take a look at this. The main area, focal point, is here. And because there are shadows around it, you create this contrast between big shapes and the smaller shapes. So like you have like black here and white here, and then you have white here. So it's like, it's very easy for you to notice that. So same here. I mean, I won't go through the same examples, but this one, I just want you to know that this is not a painting, but even when we're working with 3D, you still see a lot of interesting shapes, 2D shapes. Don't forget about the 3D forms here. Think about the shapes that it creates. And when you start doing something like this, you will see that you have like a blueprint between shadows and lights, and these will create what's really interesting for you. Now, these specifically this sculpture, because it's on 3D, the shadows that it creates, while it also, they depend on the forms that the clothes create, it also depends on the angle of the lighting, right? You can tell the lighting, it's coming from this angle, and this part of the face, it's being lit. So you're creating this light in this area, meaning in these areas that are a little bit concave, you will have the shadows where the light doesn't hit. So this particular example, if you move the lights in a different direction, they will give you a totally different feeling. It can even be totally dark if you change the lights here, right? So this is what's important, okay? This is what is important. And from now on, if you look at things this way when you work in Unreal, it's gonna make your life much better. So let's go back to Unreal. Before we move into making these, like, I'm going to show you how you can apply these concepts inside Unreal. Let me know in the comments if you have some questions. Related to the topic, of course. Otherwise, we're going to be off topic. We can become off topic the whole time. See, Tyler, you struggle with fill lights and how to make the scene lead property. We're going to touch on that now. Because what does lead property means to you? Like, typically, what you want is, when you're making a game, a couple of things. One is that the objective is clear, where to go and all those stuff. You want clarity. But the other thing is, how do you know if the lights you're putting, it's appealing enough? It's, you know, interesting enough for the eye, so that you can say, oh, this level looks pretty, or oh, this level looks, you know, boring, or whatever. Okay. And yeah, this live stream will be available after the streaming ends, so no worries, guys. Optimizing linings, we can take a look at that. Okay, so let's work on this scene. Let me go back and remove this for now, and what I'm gonna do is just create some lights, maybe these, and also you can put a light. You can put this. Let me just delete this for now. I'm gonna put skylight. Put it on real time. And I'm gonna go for lights. I'm going to put it on directional light. Okay. So if I rotate the light, you will see that I have different stuff going on. So when you have your basic lights in your scene, it will look very similar to this. So what I like to do is to remove any kind of light, like the sky atmosphere, the volumetric clouds, the skylight, and you will have something like this. So let's go to directional light, and you will see that indirect lighting intensity set to 1. It's 0 here. So now that you will have here, it's basically a blueprint, and you can even increase the intensity, or if you don't want to increase it, that's okay. But anyway, another thing you can use, and let me just do post-process volume and turn this off. There you go, much better. And let me go and create some post-process. Unbound. And let me put the saturation back to 0. Okay. And now a good way to test your lighting in these situations, it's when you select the directional light first. A good way to select those is to when you start aligning your environment, remove as many details as possible so you can take a look at the big picture. Now let's take a look at this lighting. this lining, just in and of itself, it's already creating a very interesting shape. I can even go to the post process and increase the contrast. And let me see if I can increase the contrast by a lot here. There you go. It's even more obvious what's going on with this lining. You can already tell it's coming from that direction. This area is lit and this area here is not, and it will be pitch dark, right? So let's go back here. This is your design matrix. Like, you literally don't need to, you can tell if this is interesting or not. I can already tell it's kind of interesting, to be honest. I can also move the light, Control L to move the light, and let me know if this is interesting to you, just by showing this example. Now, this lining, if I have all this stuff here, you won't know it's not interesting because you don't have this information. So let me go here to the post process, remove it, and also go to the skylight, directional light, sky, maybe some clouds. And there you go. Now, it's not only pitch dark, but you can already tell, even without going into this mode, what is important for you. And so if you remove this, put a little bit like this, and suddenly it's a little bit more important. Let's remove all those things for now. And let's go back to what we had before, which is this. So you can play with the directional light just to try out different designs. For example, you can rotate this way. You can rotate this way. Or you can just press Control L and be a little bit more of a freestyle. So for example, if you have something like this, you will have too much dark values. So you may want to play things a little bit different. Maybe like this. Or maybe you want to rotate things around. You don't want to have as much shadows. Maybe something like this. Maybe something like this could work for you. Another thing you can do is to put the lining only, just to check everything without the colors, but it will be pretty much the same, right? And so if you remove all the information, it's much easier to you to take a look at, to view your level as something like a painter will see its canvas, right? And your ability to not make these levels look, you know, pretty or, you know, something not appealing, it's already being decided here. Like, if I think this is interesting, most likely when I add the rest of the lights, it will be interesting, right? So you need to think about those stuff. Now, I know that there may be someone thinking like, hey, what about my world? It has like a dynamic system where the lights go, come and go. Like, it's like you have the sunlight and then there is the night, and then how can I deal with that? Well, in that case, you don't really have control of the lights. We used to have this kind of problem in Ubisoft because all the games are, you know, open world. So you cannot really control that. But what you can control is the model. So what do you think it's more interesting? Let me put a cube here. There is a cube, and if I rotate it this way, you will see that it creates a silhouette. The silhouette, it's basically a straight line, just like this, right? if you want to make your environments look more interesting, you need to create interesting silhouettes from your models, so that when the light hits, look at what we have created here. And that's the beauty of working with 3D. It's like sometimes you get these accidents where you have a silhouette that looks like this. It's not a straight line, right? And even if you move the light, in some situations you will not see it, just like this one. But in some situations you do. So you may not control all the situations where you can see the lining or the silhouette that you want, but you can control how the silhouette will look when the light hits here. And even if you remove all the information, we go back to square one where we had this, remember? All we're seeing here are shapes, are silhouettes from characters that without any detail, we can already tell who they are. It's the same with your environment. Take a look at the background. Can you take a look at what kind of architecture it is? Yes, you can, because you have these rooftops that have a very particular shape. And if you remove them, it will look it will just not look good, right? So let's go back. So where do you take it from here? Obviously, you don't want to take models like this because everything is interconnected. Like, you may control the lights, but you also need to control the models that you have. If this model has an interesting shape, then there's not much you can do about it. No matter which lining conditions you will have, this is just a cube, and it will read as a cube, and everyone will know it's a cube even without any kind of detail, only lights and just solid colors, right? So what do you do now? Well, a good starting point is by taking a look at the, let's just say you like this lining, which, to be honest, I don't quite like. So let me do something like this. Create a little bit of contrast. Let me go back. There you go. This is a lining I like. Why I like it? I like the contrast that I'm having in the buildings here. Shadow, brightness, shadow, brightness, shadow, brightness, brightness, shadow. And it just creates so much interesting shapes. That's what I'm seeing here when I try this light. And when I see around here, it's a huge shadow, obviously. But for the most part, I'm having very interesting shadows in my environment, not only in the walls, but also in the ground, where not everything is bright. I can also have some shadows here. Obviously, when you put objects into your scene, they will change the shadows, obviously, because if I put this object here, for example, I put a cylinder and I make it bright, very big like this, you will see that it will create a shadow. So whenever you create your environment, you kind of have the power of where the shadows are gonna come from by placing objects in a position where you will be able to see them. Now, this is your design matrix. This is basically, it's like a blueprint before building, before making a building architecture. The architectures will make a blueprint and they will say this is the plan, this is the laydown, these are the dimensions and everything. But that's that's the foundation. That's the foundation of it. It doesn't mean that that's how the building will finish, but you need to work on the foundation, because if the foundation is not good, then this just won't work for you. It doesn't matter how much detail you put in the environment. If this lining is not really interesting, then nothing will help. And for me, I already have quite a lot of interesting shapes, so I'm gonna leave it like that. Next thing you want to do is to add little by little some colors. Let's start with the directional light. Directional light, the first thing, obviously we want some indirect lining. The more indirect lining you have, the less harsh the shadows will be, right? So we're gonna leave it at 1 for now, because there's something that helps us, and that is the skylight. If you take a look at the skylight component, I can just turn it on, and you will see that all my shadows became a little bit softer. Now it says it requires a sky atmosphere, so I will turn it on too. And also my clouds. And obviously I will turn off the post-process volume. And there you go. So let's keep looking this in lining only, because this is where you will see your shadows. Now you notice that when I start adding all those lights, I start losing track of my blueprint that I had at the beginning. I still see the shadows, and I think this is really interesting. But at the same time, I'm losing like the foundation, because I'm adding more things on top of each other. So what you need to do here is basically play with intensity. For example, I think this is very intense, so maybe I go back to 5, maybe 3. Maybe 3 is a good number, right? I can also change the light color. Maybe can have a little bit of a pro tip here is like the lights are never pure white. The sunlight, it's always like has a slight tint of warmness to it. Slight tint of warmness. It's always like that. Okay. You can also use a temperature if you want, like to make it hotter or not, but this I'll already give you a lot of control. So I like the 3. I think it's like soft enough. Notice that I'm going for like a very intense color, and then I start to tone it down, right? I start to tone it down. Like this is okay. Like I like the shadows and brightness, but I need to tone everything down. It's a process that works very well. Like you go to the extremes and then you start to tone it down until there is something that you will like. And you know, I'm not even messing up with these values here. Like I can do the bloom here, and so I can have like the light shaft if I wanted. I could do that too, of course. But I'm not even messing with those, right? So next thing I'm gonna work on, it's my skylight. So my skylight, obviously I have the real-time capture, which most of the times you want, because this will be accurate. Sometimes you wanna specify cube map, which I don't have at the moment. I think I can use this one, for example, to have the desert cube map, and you can already tell. Like I will show you what this looks like. It's basically colors of it can be a random thing usually, but usually it's like an environment, and it will grab the colors of it, and it will, instead of grabbing the colors of your own scene, it will grab the colors of the cube map, right? So you can go there, and you can already see that my lights are kind of cooler, which I like. You can try it with another one, like for example this one, or you can go on the internet and find some HDR for free. You will find a lot of those on the internet. I already tell this one is already look very bright. So let's just say I like this one. I already tell everything looks cooler, and the other thing is that you can change the intensity. If I go to 0, I basically have no skylight. If I go to 0 0.5, 1, if I go to 5, everything will be like very extreme. So you can play with this value like 0 0.2 if you want. Maybe you want some darker values, or maybe you just don't want the cube map and you just want to use your colors here. That's actually a choice. So you can just press 1, have the intensity just like that. And maybe this is the value you like. Maybe it is. I can tell like the skylight is very bright, so I'm gonna remove this value. 1.5 maybe. Maybe I can change the color if I want it. But this one is not bad. Let's go back to the skylight. Leave it like that. And also you can play with the indirect lighting intensity I already showed you before. This one will pretty much make everything very blended. And also the color. Also the color here. Let me turn on real time. Which normally you don't want, but you could make your shadows like a little bit, you know, this will basically take care of the shadows. So if you make it a little bit cooler, you can just go for something like this, and you will see that it has a very interesting effect on our scene. Like our shadows are kind of blue. If I go here, I will have very warm shadows, which is not something I want. So I maybe want something bluish for my shadows, and it will kind of like balance it out between the sunlight and everything, right? Another thing you can do is to play with the sky atmosphere, of course. You can just go and change this if you want, or you know, I have the JoJo feeling. But most of the time I leave it just as it is. I leave it just as it is, and these still very bright for me. Take a look at the lighting only, and if you wanna see if it's too bright or not, just Control C, and then just go for new, and just grab the color here. You can already tell. I know my camera is there, but it's almost like 90% bright in the brightest areas, and the darkest are very, very dark. So that's too much for me. That's too much for me. So what I will do is just go to the directional light and maybe change this intensity to maybe 0.5. Maybe 0.5. And if you put 0, it will be like you don't have basically in the night, right? So you will have to have artificial lights. Another tip, if you want to make like if you want to make your scene look dark, I'm sure some of you asked there, you can just put a color of the blue light, for example, and do not cast the shadows. Do not cast the shadows and make it really like very, very dark. It's already very dark. Let's try here. There you go. This is already very, very dark. But obviously you need to add some lights here. That's, you know, normally games use post-process to make the dark areas not as dark. But I find that if you want to make it more real, you can just leave it at 0 and it will just work very well for you. So let's go back to 1. There you go. Indirect lighting, just leave it like that. And somehow the skylight, it's I think I changed something here. I'm not exactly sure what I changed, but it's definitely not good. Like I have my shadows here. Go back here to the skylight and just change these values, because everything looks kind of weird, to be honest. Oh, cast shadows is it's off. No wonder. No wonder. So let's go back to what we had before. Something like this. Like when you already train your eye, you can already tell like which lighting scenarios will look good for you and which ones won't. So this is already a pretty cool one. Or you can obviously play with the lining here, and you have something like this. There you go. Light color. You can go for something like a little bit like this, and the skylight, you can put it a little bit cooler. Even go for greenish, or I think a cool color works very well. So on top of that, obviously you have your post process and a lot of things, but this is already a very good base to start with. It's a very, very good base. So then when you try the game, oh, I had the other post process on, so it doesn't matter. Let's just forget about it for the moment. It really is just that simple. Like it really is. You don't really need much math or anything. This is already a solid start. The important thing is that you can see these shadows here. Wow, look at that. This thing is not loading the material anymore. But the important thing is that you start seeing these lines and silhouettes in your scene so that you can start making better decisions. Because if I make something like this, you know, it's not exactly the best thing. And believe me or not, I see a lot of people who are beginning and they have stuff like this, and they're not exactly quite sure what's the problem. A lot of things that look dark, a lot of things that look too bright. But this looks like the right amount of lights and shadows to me. So this is actually very, very good. Very, very good. Okay, so let's go through the questions to see if hopefully this makes things more clear. It's something I wanted to share with you for quite some time. Hopefully you find this useful. Let me see. Can you change the saturation in Blueprint while the game runs? Of course. You can access the post-process actor. You can access any actor in Blueprints and change the properties. Just try to find the same value and try to change it there. Obviously, you can change like the post-process. Let me change the contrast here. And the saturation. Can even make it a little bit more saturated. More saturation will mean more cartoonish. So if I go like this, everything will start looking more stylized, right? So obviously you need to tone down everything, but overall, when you work with these values, you want to work like not too much, like 1.05, things like that, just small little details. And you can actually make your shadows more saturated. Like for example, I can put like 550. I can sell till all the shadows are overly saturated here. Obviously, that's an extreme example, but if you want to make your shadows have a different color, you can do that here. The midtones are basically the areas we saw in the pictures before where it's not the main point of interest, such as this area. So you can decrease the saturation in those areas. So for example, here you will see that it has a little bit of color, but here in this area, they don't have much color. So, and the highlights, of course, you can make the important areas of your environment a little bit more contrasty. You can even change like the colors here or whatever. You can play with it, but overall, it's all about playing with it. It's all about playing with it. But when you have already this is actually very good. Or if you think this part is very dark, you can always put a light here. Put a light here, and maybe it's like a torch or something. I mean, something like this, or maybe it comes from one of those windows, for example. And suddenly you start to lead your environment. And then you can add a prop there to justify the existence of that light. And don't worry about these dark areas, which obviously they lose their interest when everything is flat here. You can always add some artificial lights here. I remember someone was asking like how to optimize the lights. So you see here, these lights are stationary. You see the radius here. This means they do have a limit. So if I go here and start duplicating those, you will see that I will start getting those X symbols here. So when you go for optimization and then go to light complexity, you can take a look at every time I duplicate here, or rather, let me just decrease this. When I have more overlapping lights, everything becomes more complex. So if I duplicate here, it's very bad, obviously, and we don't want that. And this is why one of the reasons you can change this by changing the radius, moving it somewhere else, for example, like here. Let's see if this one should be updated, but there you go. So this is because the stationary linings are actually expensive. And you need to bake the lining. You need a light mass importance volume. You need to bake the lining. And when you have these lights overlapping, it creates quite a problem. So what you need to do is to change to static. If you have too many lights overlapping, you need to change to static. And you will see what's going on here. Optimization, light complexity. And these are all static linings. And you can already tell, like, they are overlapping and the shader count is extremely bad. But I don't have the red symbol. It's because you can use them. And when you go to build and, you know, build the lining, build lining only, you will remove this. Basically, this will become black, pitch black. When you use a static lining like this, pitch black means it's free. It's basically free. You can put 1000 of these lights in the level and you will not have any kind of issue. Whereas these ones, they do increase the complexity over time when these are stationary. So you may want to take a look at those. Now we only have the skylight and the directional light, so our lining is pretty simple. But as you add more and more complexity, to everything, everything will start looking like a little bit, you know, uh, more complex to render. That's where you need to decide, okay, this light will be stationary or just movable, and just see how it goes. Okay. Hello, Bills. Hello from Brazil. Is the cube map color the same as just changing the temperature? Not really. I mean, in a way they do the same, but the cube map has way more colors, right? This is just a solid color, whereas if you go use the cube map and use the capture scene, when you use the cube map color, and you will use all these colors in your scene. So it's technically the same, but at the same time, I will say the cube map has more range of colors. But if you use a real-time capture, then it will grab the colors of your scene. Now, if you want to make your lighting more impressive, obviously you need to add more colors here. And this environment is not finished at all, and we like a little bit of color. And when I work more on it, I will show you what I mean, because there are a lot of things that still need to be finished here. But when you add more color, then suddenly your light also becomes better, because it's getting the colors of those meshes, those materials, and it's projecting those into the environment. So it will become much more interesting to watch. And yeah, you can use that trick. Like, a lot of people use that trick. Like, for example, if you play Elden Ring, Dark Souls, they put like a lining here, and because they don't want, let's say, a little bit bright yellowish, just like that, and because it creates shadows, you don't really want that. So what you can do, it's cast shadows off, and it doesn't matter where you go, you will always have the lining here. Obviously this is very intense, so you can change the intensity to something like that, like 50, and let's imagine your character walking here. It's very subtle, but you know, it works on games. It works on games, especially when things become too dark. This is very, very important, so you can always see the character. And obviously you have the lining channels. So if you, obviously everything has a channel here. If you put 0, it will lead the channel 0. And you can put your character to another lining channel. Like, for example, this is lining channel 1. And then you can just change the lining channel to not 0. I don't want to lead the environment. I only want to lead, the character. And that's where, you will be able to lead here, right? So that's a trick you can use, obviously. Hello from Romania. Romania, I was thinking, where's Romania? It's like Romania. Hello, Paul. I don't know how to pronounce your name. It's a Russian name. I've watched my videos for several years now, and that's it's a lot of years. That's definitely a lot of years to Appreciate it. Appreciate it. Hopefully, these things all we talk about here, the lights, the silhouettes, the contrast. Hopefully, after looking at everything here, you can already tell like how to make your levels better, and you will notice that it has nothing to do with your technical ability. It has nothing to do with your ability to, you know, which button I use. There's a setting, there is a plugin I don't have, that's why my environment doesn't look good. It's not that. It's really not that. It's all about your judgment and applying these principles that usually you see it in paintings or traditional art professions, but you can apply it here as well, just using different tools. Instead of using a pen or a pencil, you're just using Unreal. You're just using your lights, you're rotating objects. You can, you know, like this light here, you can rotate this object and suddenly it becomes pitch dark. You don't want the contrast there. Very easy. Rotate it. That's it. Problem solved. It won't catch the eye that much. You have control over these decisions, so that you can have like a better judgment. It's really nothing about like the tools that Unreal have or anything. It's everything about these hidden concepts that have been there with us hundreds of years, since, you know, these paintings are really old, so they have been us hundreds of years and they work for a reason. What's your name? My name is Mauricio. If you didn't get that right, probably you can just call me Mao. That's a short version of my name, and it's very easy to remember. Stormron, thanks for the sub. Hopefully you find some. There are plenty of tutorials there. They're available for free in our channel if you wanted to take a look at those. Obviously, all the environment tutorials I used to work on those, so feel free to take a look at those. You work for Ubisoft or something? I used to work for Ubisoft, not anymore. But I work as an environment artist for several years. You know, I'm gonna tell you a story because, you know, when I started working at Ubisoft, before I was too focused on technical stuff. I didn't have much art foundation. And this is the thing that was holding me back, because at Ubisoft you use another engine, of course. They have the Anvil, and it's not Unreal, it's just different. So you rely a lot on the art foundation to make things look good in any kind of medium. So that's where I train really hard on the art foundation, because technically I got the ability to make things look right. This thing happened many years ago. I'm talking about when I was maybe 24, 25. I'm 30, will be 31 soon. So I'm teaching you things that that I should have learned before. My journey will be much easier. Like, even if you don't get it right at the beginning, as long as you have the concept in your head, you will know, you will know exactly like what's wrong in your environment, what's happening. Okay. Yeah, this tool is great, man. Hope you enjoy learning Unreal, because these tools is only gonna get better. It's already very nice to be able to use this now. I'm sure you can create a lot of interesting stuff. Okay, guys, if you have a topic you want me to cover, let me know. Let me know in the comments in this video. I will put this video available for you. You can watch it, review it. If you want to review the concepts, you can watch the video. I'm gonna leave it like that. If you like this video, don't forget to like it, subscribe it if you don't want to miss other future live streams. And obviously, if you want to learn more, check our website. But you can always take a look at our YouTube channel. We have plenty of content available for you. And yeah, just let me know in the comments which kind of topics you wanna use, you want me to cover in the future. Okay, so that's it, guys. I gotta run, but I will see you next time. Bye, guys.